Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar exploring API Women Overcoming Domestic Violence and Human Trafficking. We are recording this webinar for those who aren't able to join us and for you to refer to after this session. My name is Michael Nobleza, and I'll be moderating today's webinar hosted by the Asian Pacific Fund. The Asian Pacific Fund is committed to strengthening the Bay Area's API community by increasing philanthropy and supporting the organizations that serve our most vulnerable community members. Each year, we distribute upwards of $750,000 in grants and scholarships. We are also increasing our efforts to raise awareness about the hidden needs within the API community, which is why we're on this webinar. Before we dive in, a few housekeeping items. First, everyone will be on mute so that we can have a clear conversation and a clean recording. If you'd like to ask a question, please use the chat box at the bottom of your screen. You can hover your cursor at the bottom. There's a speech bubble icon that says chat, as you see in that graphic. If I see a question that can be answered immediately, I'll go ahead and ask it. Otherwise, know that we'll have a dedicated question and answer period later in this webinar. So to give you a chance to kind of test out that chat feature, why don't you go ahead and type where you're calling from or dialing in from so we can see all the different places and different cities that you might be dialing from. Give you a few moments. See someone from San Francisco, Washington State. See who else is, where else you're all calling from. Hawaii, very great. Fresno, California, I love it. Merced, fantastic. Sounds like you all are finding that chat box. New York City, Albuquerque, fantastic. As an aside, the registration that we got, the furthest distance we got a registration from was Papua New Guinea. So I'm excited that this is reaching that far out. So thank you for finding that chat feature. Second, we're live tweeting during the webinar today. If you hear something today that's of particular interest to you, feel free to share it on Twitter, tagging us using our handle on the slide, Asian Pacific Fund. There's no U in fund, just Asian Pacific FND, and using the hashtag API Hidden Need. Third, everyone who registered for this webinar will receive a follow-up email with links you can use to download today's presentation in accompanying video and audio format. Finally, we'd like to thank the Women's Foundation of California for their generous support of this webinar. The Women's Foundation is a statewide community foundation dedicated to securing gender justice in California. For more information, please visit www.womensfoundca.org. So to set the context for this conversation, we'd like to do a quick poll. You'll see the question for this poll at the top. Have you or someone you know been personally affected by domestic violence or human trafficking? So go ahead and indicate your responses there. We'll see how much this issue has affected us. Give us a few more moments. It looks like we got most of the respondents coming in. Waiting for the last responses. Great. Let's go ahead and end this polling here and display the results shortly. So you should see on your screen that judging from these responses, this issue is definitely one that hits close for a lot of us. And I hope that today's webinar will provide some new perspectives. Great. So now it's time to dive into the main topic of today's webinar, and it's my privilege to introduce to you three of the fund's affiliates who have different perspectives and specific approaches to addressing the needs of API women overcoming domestic violence and human trafficking. The first person I'd like to introduce is Orchid Pusey, Acting Executive Director for the Asian Women's Shelter. Orchid has been on staff since 2002. She's led a national training and technical assistance program in the domestic violence field for over 8 years. And she's the founder and lead staff person for the Asian Women's Shelter's Community Interpretation Training Institute, CITI, and Multilingual Digital Storytelling Project. So I'm going to turn it over to Orchid. Orchid?
Hi, everyone. It's my honor to be here with you and to share a glimpse into Asian Women's Shelter's work. I'm going to start right off with our mission. So the mission of Asian Women's Shelter, or AWS, is to end domestic violence by promoting the social, political, and economic self-determination of women and all survivors of violence and oppression. And we believe that strong communities are built on a foundation of healthy families and individuals, and that every single person has a right to live in a violence-free home, to end a relationship without risking their life, and to decide whether or when to leave a job. We also advocate at AWS that at a really ground level, basic rights aren't special rights. So for a survivor who speaks Mongolian and no English, being able to speak to an advocate or represent herself in court is a basic right, not a special right. For a survivor who's in a wheelchair, being able to enter the shelter and move throughout it is a basic right, not a special right. And for an African-American transgender survivor, having an advocate that supports their safety, not just from domestic violence, but also from anti-Black and transphobic violence, is essential. So when we opened in 1988, public systems that were related to safety, that could be like mental health systems, clinics, law enforcement, and 911, suicide prevention, those systems weren't in any way accessible to limited English proficient communities. And at that time, the domestic violence movement in the 1980s wasn't taking initiative to support marginalized communities, and culturally specific communities weren't embracing their own survivors of violence either, and were perpetuating beliefs and behaviors that justified violence against women and LGBTQ people, or colluded with it, or minimized it, or dismissed it. And at that time, there was no anti-trafficking community to speak of, though trafficked adults and children were in our neighborhoods and everyday industries. So this context made AWS open its doors with core values that were critical to our identity in 1988 and are still critical to who we are and how we work today. So for example, we value language and cultural accessibility because it saves lives. And we value an anti-oppression analysis as essential to understanding how domestic violence plays out in different communities. And we value movement building because domestic violence and human trafficking, it's not an individual issue. It's a huge, devastating, and very expensive social issue. So ending, for example, domestic violence isn't just about putting one more survivor into shelter at AWS or one more perpetrator of abuse into prison. It's about empowerment and changing lives and childhoods and evolving cultures, improving systems responses to survivors, and collaborating across movements, reaching out across movements for justice and equality. When people want to learn who we work with or who we serve, sometimes they might wonder, is it only Asians or only women or only in shelter? And my answer is no. So these three words are inclusive but not exclusive. So AWS works with all survivors, focusing on those that have the least access to existing services and systems. So we have a language access model that makes our programs accessible in 42 languages. Most are languages from Asia, from Iraq in the west to Bangladesh in the south, Japan in the east, Philippines, Indonesia in the southeast. But it also includes other communities that face similar barriers to accessing systems of safety and support. And while the majority of our clients are cisgender women and children, We also work with transgender survivors across the gender spectrum and with cisgender men as well. And by cisgender men or women, I mean men or women whose gender identity matches what was expected of them from birth. So survivors that are coming to AWS are coming from relationships that are new, old, married, unmarried, straight, LGBTQ, physically violent, and not physically violent, but abusive and emotional, financial, sexual, or other ways. And finally, we do work with survivors in our shelter, and we also work with survivors who are living out in the community, and we lead community education events and training and technical assistance programs, systems change and advocacy efforts, and grassroots mobilization and research initiatives. That's all you can get that from the website. But really, who we work with at AWS are real whole people. And it's people who have been surviving violence, usually from someone close to them, whether it's domestic violence or human trafficking. And AWS residents, they don't represent all survivors of violence. They represent survivors who have nowhere else to go, who don't have family members in the area to turn to, who don't have friends who have a spare bedroom or the garage that can be turned into temporary safe housing for a friend in need. And many are facing the need to support themselves and their children without a partner or spouse, without family, without job references or credit, without having had the opportunity to take English classes while they're waiting for immigration status and work permits to come through. Many have needed to change their phone, their accounts, and sometimes move out of state or across the country to get away from the people searching for them. So in other words, the survivors that we work with are regular, imperfect people who also happen to be heroes, who are facing these realities, these types of realities, this buildup of realities that would make me, and I would say most of us, collapse. But they get up, and whether a day is filled with home-cooked meals and moments of camaraderie or birthday cakes in the shelter, or with pain and doubt after a re-traumatizing court hearing, they get up with the support of their advocates, and they do it again the next day. On the next slide, I want to give a moment to talking about this particular moment in our nation when immigrant and refugee communities, which of course includes disabled immigrants and refugees and LGBTQ immigrants and refugees, elders and youth, are facing additional barriers and stress. And to be clear, just like alcoholism doesn't create domestic violence all by itself, anti-immigrant policies don't either, but they do exacerbate factors that increase violence by raising chronic stress and trauma responses in communities, lowering our community's mental health, heightening desires for tighter dominance and control in family and cultural settings, and stifling help seeking in targeted communities. So we see community leaders minimize gender-based violence in the face of what they consider to be larger issues of safety. We see survivors get even more stuck between protecting themselves and their children, protecting their abusers from arrest and deportation, and protecting their communities from just more negative press. And we see abusers gain access to more tools for control and retaliation that are related to current dynamics with immigration and child custody, police interaction, and more. So just as survivors' informal social networks tell them, protect the community, i.e. protect the batterer and not themselves, survivors are retreating from accessing formal sources of support like violence against women services, 911, family services or school programs, for fear of, well-grounded fear of racist and anti-immigrant action from both leaders in those settings and from other program participants. And this is a huge deal in California and elsewhere, but in California, where over 25% of the population is foreign-born, around 220 languages are spoken, around 40% of Californians speak a language other than English at home, and where we have the largest Asian LGBTQ population in the nation. So in response, we advocate loudly and persistently for meaningful language and cultural access to services and systems, and we advocate loudly and persistently for the creation of culturally specific survivor-centered programs with communities that have nowhere else to go. So on my next slide, I want to just highlight quickly for you one culturally specific program that that brings together all the values and the realities that I've touched on. So after years of slowly building our capacity at Asian Women's Shelter to work with Arab and Muslim survivors, AWS formally launched its Arab Women's Services program to support a community facing extremely limited access to existing services and a community that's surviving scrutiny and violence at interpersonal and institutional levels. So these are communities coming from the Arab world in Central Asia, West and Southwest Asia, the Persian Gulf, and Northern Africa. So to follow our mission of promoting social, political, and economic self-determination of women and all survivors of violence, we needed more than a pamphlet in Arabic saying, "Come to AWS." So we designed Arab Women's Services as a holistic response to domestic violence. And I won't go through each petal of this flower, but I'm just going to touch on a few. So in this program, survivors can access individual therapy from an Arab and Arabic-speaking female therapist who understands violence and trauma, helping to fill a tremendous gap in our region. Direct casework, it includes anonymous support through an Arabic language helpline and in-depth in-person case management. Survivors also get access to unstigmatized opportunities for social bonding and skills building that break the isolation that makes domestic violence so deadly. Community-based skills building groups cover topics like how to use Muni, that's our public transit system, how to read a map of San Francisco, sharing, cultural cooking and crafts, financial literacy, understanding rights if immigration and customs enforcement shows up at your door or you get off your plane and you're not allowed through customs. Survivors are also struggling to stop intergenerational cycles of violence. They're trying to rebond with their kids and to take parental leadership after the abusive parent has modeled for the children how to treat their mother with hostility. So Arab Women's Services offers the Positive Parenting Program, an 8-week program in Arabic. QRAB, down in the sort of 7 o'clock slot, if this were a clock, QRAB is the petal of Arab Women's Services that specifically supports LGBTQ Arabs with case management, isolation breaking gatherings, and a 10-week peer education and violence prevention group on building happy and fulfilling relationships. And finally, Arab Women's Services models that healing requires more than just meetings and applications and forms. It really, really requires joy and connection and celebration. So community gatherings to celebrate iftar during Ramadan and Eid help build survivors' resilience and a sense of belonging. And through Arab Women's Services, we've had women who've been forced to give up their children in home countries, women whose imams and mosques have turned their backs on them, transgender and lesbian Arabs who previously had no safe community join AWS again after being shelter residents to become volunteers and language advocates and to go with us to Sacramento, our state capital, to advocate for policies and funding that support other survivors of violence now and in the future. And I have to tell you that being part of their team literally makes me a better person. It makes me a more hopeful person. And I hope you'll be inspired to join our team also. And so in closing, I want to really give a heartfelt welcome to you to join this work and to join our team. And sometimes I know it's hard to know what to do or how to engage. So I've given you some of my ideas. One, really donate unrestricted funds and feel amazing about it. Feel connected through it and do it regularly like Netflix. I feel like I pay certainly for so many things that are less worthy than the people and the communities that I've been describing. You can also invite us to come to do a training or educational workshop for your community. You can become an AWS volunteer or hourly interpreter or bilingual advocate. You can absolutely ask me about our semi-annual training. You can also really be a leader and show your face as someone who supports survivors of violence. You can ask for donations at your birthday party or a wedding. You can join or sponsor or invite your friends to our events. We always want to see you. And the last two things here have to do with what each of us has the power to do, which is to live our daily life in a way that reduces violence and strengthens communities. So please support the people in your life who are going through crises having to do with intimate violence. Call us so we can support you through it. And, you know, there are a million ways that each of us can model and teach gender-based justice to the young people around us. We can praise girls for something other than being cute or pretty, and praise boys for being kind or helpful, or for noticing how others are feeling. We can reach out to kids who are not gender normative with unconditional acceptance and love, and teach healthy coping strategies for the hard emotions of life that we all encounter, modeling that violence and coercion are never okay. And every single move, like these moves, makes our community stronger and healthier. And thank you for doing them and being here with us today.
Thank you, Orchid, for your presentation and for your organization's powerful work. I think you really hit the home, especially at the end, the importance of the intersectional approach to working with API women around these issues. So thank you for that. Next, I'd like to introduce to you Gloria Tan, who has been Executive Director to Gamun's Women's Residence and the Asian Women's Resource Center since 1986. Gloria was instrumental in the establishment of 2 satellite centers for Gamun as part of the Asian Family Support Project in San Francisco's Richmond and Sunset districts. I'll let Gloria tell you more about her organization's work. Gloria?
Thank you. It's a great honor to be part of this webinar. But first of all, I'd like to start with sharing Gamun's mission statement. So Gamun was established to address the unmet needs of Asian Pacific Islander immigrant women and children, especially those who are survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. Through our various services, we hope to foster stability, self-reliance, self-determination, and full access to opportunity. Gamun has 150 years of history, and we were founded as the Oriental Home and School in 1868, with the original mission of rescuing Chinese girls sold into slavery and prostitution and providing them with housing and education. Today, Gamun provides safe, affordable housing from 18 to 24 months for Asian immigrant women who are survivors of domestic violence and trafficking. We have a multilingual staff that provides supportive services, including support groups and individualized case management services for the clients that are enrolled in our housing program. And in 1984, Gamun decided that they wanted to reach out to the community, so the Asian Women's Resource Center was established. Through the Asian Women's Resource Center, we were able to provide a wide variety of services supporting immigrant families with young children that could be at risk of violence. Now, some of the services that we provide are parenting, education, and support groups, parent-child interactive groups where the parents come with their young children to groups which are facilitated by trained teachers and teacher assistants. We have drop-in play groups and grandparent support groups, summer school and weekend children art and piano classes. Some of the key issues that we are working with our clients right now, and we have noticed a trend, is that due to the recent federal policies on immigration laws, it has resulted, all these welfare reforms has really resulted in serious financial barriers to Asian immigrant women that are seeking safety. Now, recognizing that welfare programs are very important for an individual domestic clients that could be fleeing domestic violence is very important. Now, some of the welfare programs that I'm talking about, I'm referring to maybe CalFresh, which previously is known as the Food Stamp Program, and health insurance. Now, these programs, there is widespread impressions created among caseworkers, government agencies, and especially our immigrant-battered women that they are not entitled to benefits anymore. And this impression has prevented a lot of our domestic violence women from applying, and even caseworkers from accepting their applications. Caseworkers, some of the caseworkers that are ignorant, they are indicating that battered women who are not complying with job search and work requirements, and they are therefore terminating their benefits or even reducing their benefits. In addition to that, there's always that great fear of mandatory reporting to immigration. And the fear of becoming a deportable public charge has also kept Asian immigrant domestic violence from applying for public benefits. Now, without all of these safety nets, to keep them from falling into dire circumstances if they leave the bachelor, these women remain in dangerous and violent situations. We heard of cases where women are too afraid to apply for benefits just for the time, and they would only do that for very briefly, just for the time that it takes for them to leave the dangerous relationship, and they indicated that they were denied of their applications. They are afraid that they would eventually be denied of their formal application for their visa or even for their legal permanency residency. They are afraid to be deported. And for many of these women, it just seemed like it's not worth applying for these benefits, because they don't want to be designated as a public charge. So all of these immigration reforms are creating a lot of fear and toxic stress to these immigrants, which are really not healthy for them emotionally and their mental health. They are just so afraid of using government programs. Next. Now, 19% of Asian Pacific Islander women reported have been pressured to have sex without consent by their intimate partner since age 18. And of these, 44% were raped. 12% reported that an intimate partner had hurt or had attempted to hurt them by means of kicking, hitting, slapping, shoving, object throwing, or even threatening their lives with weapons. But most importantly, in our collaborations with CalFresh and different government public agencies, there have been reports that have indicated a decline in the application for public benefits. Now, how do we address these issues? Outreach efforts. Now, we partner with CalFresh, which is formerly known as the Food Stamp Money, to do huge outreach efforts at least twice a year. We collaborate with them, we encourage our clients to attend, we advocate for the needs of our clients. And in some cases, we have had staff that are sitting right next to them, helping them to advocate for them, reassuring these caseworkers that they have all the necessary paperwork to prove that they are domestic violence client, and advocating for the maximum pot of money. We collaborate with attorneys that are available to answer any questions regarding public benefits and immigration issues, questions regarding public charge, whether that's going to hurt their application for US citizenship or even for their green cards. We are working with many of our clients, encouraging them to be US citizens. We help them with their applications, and of course we help them with the 100 questions, because many of our clients are monolingual, they don't understand English at all. So even reviewing the questions can be very difficult, can pose a great hardship to them. We provide bi-weekly support group for our clients that are staying at Gamun. These support groups are of great help to them, reassuring them and helping them with their healing process. And just a few ideas on how you can help. Now, you can volunteer your time. Many of our clients are very isolated, very lonely. They don't have any family here. Many of their clients or family are back in other countries of origin. So Gamun is their family. Be a friend to them. Sometimes all they need is really an individual that they can talk to, they can share with, and it's all about building the trust with our volunteers again. You can help to organize and sponsor special holidays such as Mother's Day that's coming up, Christmas party, or Thanksgiving, because holidays can be very lonely times for many of our clients for them, and they can get, some of them can get very depressed. Mentoring our clients, helping them, with job search skills, helping them with their resumes, encouraging them or even teaching them how to apply for jobs online, reviewing them, interview techniques, about job etiquettes in this country are all very important soft skills that our clients should learn. And this is so critical in helping them to build financial stability as they move forward in their lives. And of course, all of you can definitely help agencies like Gamun by donating to us. All of this unrestricted funding is so essential in helping us, to support the clients that are staying here. Very often, many of our clients may lose a job, or they're still waiting for their visa to be approved, so they can't even find a legal employment yet. So in the meantime, we do everything we can to support them by even providing a gift card to a grocery store and helping. We want to make sure they don't go hungry here, or even if they are sick, they need medication, we give them a card to Walgreens where they can go get medication. So I thank you all again, once again, for joining us on this webinar.
Congratulations on your anniversary. I apologize, I was on mute. I was saying that I think Gloria's work really underscored just the ways in which the quickly changing policy environment around immigration has impacted the ongoing work. So thank you, Gloria, for that. Now I'd like to introduce Ravina Nimbalkar, Executive Director for Narka. Many of you may recognize this organization from our most recent e-newsletter. Ravina grew up in India and moved to the US 12 years ago, and she's worked with women, children, and adults with mental illness from different religious, socioeconomic, and ethnic backgrounds. Prior to joining Narka, Ravina worked as the program director for Kiran, a nonprofit organization that helps South Asian victims of domestic and sexual violence in North Carolina. Ravina?
Thank you so much, everyone, and good afternoon. So Narika has been helping South Asian survivors of domestic violence for the last 26 years. And by South Asia, I mean people from India, Burma, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, all these countries. Narika was started by a group of women from the community because they were seeing domestic violence happening very often. And there wasn't any culturally appropriate domestic violence agency to help these women who also spoke South Asian languages and did not understand the culture. So to tell you about our mission is to promote women's independence, economic empowerment, and well-being by helping domestic violence survivors with advocacy, support, and education. We have a more detailed mission on our slide here. I just wanted to give you a brief. On the next slide, please. So 64% of Indian and Pakistani women have experienced abuse by an intimate partner at least once in their lifetimes. And 7 out of 10 South Asian households, there is some form of control, coercion, and abuse. To mention the culturally specific challenges, I would like to tell you about importance of honor and honor killing. And by honor killing, it is when a woman brings dishonor to her family. It can mean that she has violated principles of her community or religion. She might have refused to an arranged marriage or want to marry out of her community. She can also be a survivor of rape. And often rape victims in South Asia are re-victimized. And these are some of the, I'm going to go over some of the culturally specific challenges, and these are some of the things that really, really prohibit our clients from seeking help and understanding domestic violence. The role of extended family, especially in-laws, in South Asian communities, domestic violence is not only intimate partner violence, it is family violence. Often victims live with their extended family and face violence, and that plays a very important role. Arranged marriages and child marriage. Although things are changing in urban cities, arranged marriage and child marriage are still practiced in South Asian communities, which adds a lot of complication to domestic violence because of the involvement of the families. Um, Female feticide. Many South Asian communities still believe that women are a burden to their families, especially because of the dowry system. And by dowry system, I mean where the parents of the girl child have to pay money to the bridegroom's family during the wedding. In South Asian countries, it is still illegal to know the sex of the child due to the high rate of female feticide. We get a lot of calls at Narika because the families are forcing them to abort a child because it's a woman, whereas the mother does not want to do that. If the client is in their home country while she's pregnant, it is illegal to know. But then there are still ways to find out because there are a lot of practices who still help people to find out the sex of the child. And lastly, I would like to mention social stigma. Social stigma plays a very important role in South Asian domestic violence situation. Divorce is a big taboo in South Asian communities, and many of our clients stay in the marriage just because the community does not accept divorce very well. Even their own families, like their own parents, will ask them to stay in the marriage because the community will then question their upbringing, and it will also cause a shame in the society for them. So to give you a little bit more information about the services that Narika provides, we have a helpline which is operated from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. The helpline staff provide a confidential assistance to all callers, including safety planning and connection to resources, shelters, legal, mental housing. And we also speak different South Asian language, which can be a biggest barrier for our callers to seek help. We have the Self-Empowerment and Economic Development Program, which we called as a SEED program. Our SEED program addresses culturally and economic barriers that South Asian women face in unhealthy relationships. SEED program provides targeted skills and resources they need, by they I mean the survivors, to avoid, leave, and recover from domestic violence situation. Some of the workshops we provide are financial literacy, career training, and civic engagement. And then lastly, we have a support group for these women. Our support group is a very safe space to nurture a sense of community, to foster self-care and mutual support for our survivors. This program aims to galvanize survivors as advocates of self-empowerment, health, and health healing for them. This is a 8-week-long program, and we try to run this program all over East Bay. To go over the next slide. Narika clients, about 85% of our clients have children. 90% of our clients are born outside of the US, and 75% of Narika clients don't have a job. So you can see that the services that we provide are really helpful to these clients because of the language barrier and the culturally appropriate services that we provide. So some of the common nature of abuse in South Asian community is non-physical coercive control tactic, and by that I mean it can be isolation, it can be micromanagement, manipulation, threat, punishment, stalking. I think all of you are aware that domestic violence, it does not necessarily mean physical violence. It can have different forms of violence, and non-physical is one of them. And then financial and communication is also very prominent in domestic violence, especially in South Asian communities. By that I mean not giving access to money, or taking away her earnings, or even not letting her work. It can also mean not allowing to communicate with her family, or to even keep a tab of who she communicates, and just spying on her through all kinds of mediums. And then one of the other is rigid gender roles. By this I mean, in the South Asian communities, the male, it's a very male-dominated society, and the perpetrators can use culture to control the victim, to say that he has a more important role being a male, and try to manipulate them accordingly. And then the last one I would like to mention is using children as pawns. This can mean to threaten them about custody, to threaten them about deportation and abduction. And a lot of our clients stay in the marriages because there's they fear that they might lose the child, or they might not have access to the child if they leave. So how can you help, Narika? One is to volunteer in our programs, the 3 programs that I mentioned. We're always in need of volunteers to help us with events, outreach, and also our programs, like I mentioned. The other is to help raise awareness about domestic violence. You can speak against domestic violence by hosting an event, telling your friends and family about it. Invite us to speak at an organization to speak about domestic violence and educate them. And also use social media to speak against domestic violence. I feel that social media is a great way to reach out to people and to voice your opinion. And these days, a lot of people are using social media to let everyone know how they feel, especially the younger population. And lastly, to donate to our direct funds, direct aid funds. These funds help our clients with Uber rides, grocery, toiletries, hotel stay, immigration, legal fees, or any kind of emergency needs that our clients have to escape a domestic violence situation. So do reach out to us if you would like to volunteer. And thank you so much for hearing me out.
Thank you, Ravina. I think you really helped us to understand. All of our presenters actually helped us to understand, but you in particular helped us to understand the importance of a responsive approach specific to API women. So folks, now it's time for our question and answer period. If you have a question you'd like to ask our presenters, go ahead and type it into the chat window, and we'll go ahead and ask our presenters. We already have a few questions come up, so I'll ask the first one as you go along. I also understand that some folks are dialing in by phone, and so because we've disabled the raise hand features, you can also go ahead and type your name as well, and I can unmute you as well. So the first question that came up was, what are the best practices for helping domestic violence victims recover? So Orchid, Gloria, Ravina, any thoughts around that?
This is Orchid. It's a giant question, and I think that. Oh, I just saw there's a big comment coming up. Let me try to respond first to this question. So, I think that there are ways to support survivors in the long term that range from interpersonal community support that just keeps giving people encouragement and resisting victim blaming. There's work that is done more in practical terms of economic empowerment. So this is where our work intersects with others working on affordable housing, affordable, low-income housing that is safe for families, as well as, people who are working to expand access to mental health support for low-income people and families, for everyone from little kids all the way up through elders who are trying to rebuild after violence.
Thanks, Orchid. Gloria, Ravina, any thoughts on that?
Hi, this is Gloria. So my experience in working with the domestic violence survivors staying at Gamun, I feel like one of the best practice for a long-term need is a mental health counseling and support. These women very often are very lonely, very isolated, and some have depression. These mental health support groups, really encourage these women to seek help and be open to receiving it, and telling them and sharing with them that it is okay. There is no time limit to their healing. And and indicating to them that asking for help does not mean that they're helpless or they are useless. A lot of shame comes with their domestic violence experience too.
Thank you, Gloria. That's a great point. Ravina, any thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Gloria. I think I agree with her completely. Support groups are a great way for our clients to be able to step back into the community and face the world. I think because of what they've gone through, they need a lot of hand-holding. And we at NARICA, we try to do that as much as we can, and then try to connect them with the community so that they are able to go back into their lives and lead a normal life. So I completely agree with both the panelists.
Thank you all. And there's another question related, but I'm going to kind of put it aside for a minute. There's a really great question coming from a college student at a university who really is asking around a broader question around allyship. For her, she asked, how young people like her can get involved in the work that your organizations do. She puts in her comments, awareness is definitely a part of becoming involved, but as a student, she finds it difficult to find sources or learning environments where she's able to really approach these issues from a perspective beyond the academic. So I guess the broader question as I'm looking at this is, where do people who may have no familiarity related to this issue or who may have constraints about their ability to access information or resources, where does an ally start? How do they actually begin to kind of move past having interest and actually educating themselves about the issues that you all spoke about?
This is Orchid. While I really appreciate the question, and I really appreciate the drive to engage, not just from an academic perspective, but from an on-the-ground community center perspective. I love that. And I feel like the first response that comes to my mind, I'm a little worried that it's sort of boring, but I think that the great thing about right now is that there is an ease to learn online what the programs in any local area are. And I think that for us as a local program, we engage a lot of students actually who are in this similar place of really feeling it in their heart, having tried to feel it, to grow it in their brain academically, but then who want to actually do more. And going through training, it's why, so every program is going to be different in terms of what access points they offer. But so for us at Asian Women's Shelter, and I hope for some programs that are close to this university, there's a training that is provided free that gives people in this position, whether they're students or they're retired people or they whatever, the chance to learn really more in depth about what survivors are facing and how we support survivors in a really practical, pragmatic way. And then after that training, people are then able to engage in whatever way matches their skills. If they want to do fundraising, great. If they want to do direct advocacy, great. It's helped our programs a lot.
Great. Thank you, Orchid. And I'm related to that. There was a question earlier about the role that men can play as allies, given the kind of gender-based dynamics that are involved with this particular issue. So how can men be effective allies for the work that you do?
This is Robina. I feel that having men as speakers of domestic violence makes a lot of impact in the community. We try to recruit more volunteers who are men to speak against domestic violence and have them come to the community and speak against it, because that really impacts a lot, because we don't want them to feel, our community to feel that it's only only women are speaking against domestic violence, but we have men as well who are out there talking about it. As well, we try to cater some events just for men, so that we try to engage them as much as we can, and also reach out to our survivors and like tell them that not all men are abusers. There are some positive people out there who are also speaking against domestic violence.
Hi, so this is Gloria. So in fact, we do that as well for survivors. We do encourage them positive thoughts as well as not to be afraid of men. In fact, one of our mental health therapists is male. And sometimes there's a little bit of hesitation for our survivors to go to the male therapist, but we highly encourage them to do that because they have to get over their fear. And in working with especially Asian immigrant men, I think it is important that for men to adopt a position of moral humility and equal respect for the women.
Yeah, this is Orchid. I think one of the things that to me relates to men's engagement in this work and to communities' responses to men who engage in this work has to do with just how deeply embedded sexist responses are. And the one that comes to my mind that happens so much that I want men in this work to be aware of and address is how, women in our work might be saying one thing for 20 years and then a man says it and it's suddenly treated like the most innovative, amazing thing that's ever been said on the face of the planet. And the leadership of women then actually just is very quickly forgotten. And their innovation, their leadership, their courage. And I think that what is a response that's helpful is for men who engage in the work to know about and be really sensitive to these dynamics as they do their work, whether it's as a therapist, as a speaker, as a children's advocate, as a volunteer coordinator, to spot these dynamics, not just to be like, well, I'm not like those bad men, but to see, this is a systemic thing and a cultural thing. And so men and women and trans people can support, for example, in our training setting, can support a community space where that dynamic is caught and named and discussed. Not that people who engage in it are horrible people, but to really lift it out as something real and something that is part of something we're trying to dismantle. I also think in our training spaces, we have male volunteers, male language advocates coming in to be trained to be interpreters. And what we want in that space is for others, for that male participant and others in that space to resist the pleaser training that we've all had since birth, that teaches us to be much more sensitive to how the man in the room is doing. If he's upset, does he agree with us? Does he nod when we're talking? Does he seem uncomfortable by what I'm saying? Am I generalizing men too much? Is it going to hurt his feelings? It ends up dominating this stress ends up dominating the whole space in a way that we really want to shift. So I think that work involves everybody.
Thank you. Thank you all for those reflections. I think you really kind of are speaking to, on the individual level, how you're helping your individual clients, but how it actually connects back to the broader system. And I think to move us to a place of empowerment, but also to kind of begin to move us towards wrapping up, one last question that is asked is, and specifically for Orchid, but for all of you, is, how do you help women who are trying to overcome the social stigma of seeking services? How do you get them to do that and to commit to participating in activities? How do you create that safe space for them?
I can start just with a specific question about the Arab Women's Services program. I think there are a couple key things. So one, again, at the risk of sounding really basic, is just that the program is it's developed and run by and for Arab women. So I am not the leader of that, for example. That would be ineffective. And it doesn't mean that we just go out and pick some random person who meets a demographic quota. It means, that we find the people in marginalized communities who already who are completely on board, who are fighting violence in their own ways, in their own communities already. And we build up their capacity so that they can become the leaders of these kinds of efforts. And then we start out by making the efforts not really DV specific with, with domestic violence or sexual assault front and center in the name and the heading and all the activities and all the speakers. We really mix it up. And then if sometimes communities are really funny because they're like, oh, you're offering yoga so you can get me in the door and talk about domestic violence. And we're like, kind of, maybe. But they come for the yoga, and then slowly the camaraderie forms, and from relationships comes sharing and revealing and sort of slow overcoming of stigma. I think a lot of times in the Arab Women's Services program, people would say, well, this is all good. I mean, education is good, but no Arab women go to shelter, right? This is other Arab women. But Arab women don't go to shelter. And we say, no, actually, they do. They have for years. They're just not telling you about it. They're not telling anyone in their life about it. And that's the part we need to, we need to work on all the parts. But then they're like, really? And then it sort of opens the door for people in the community to see parts of their own community that have been hidden and are actively hiding, so that they can help create the space in which they themselves and other survivors need to hide less.
Got it. Well, we're coming up to the top of the time that we need to kind of wrap up for this, but I appreciate that last comment around how we think about creating access, creatively thinking about how we create access for folks to be able to begin to safely step into, or dip their toes in the water, if you will, to be able to feel safe about what they're doing. We do have a few more questions, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. And I will say that if you do have any burning questions, we'll make sure to pass those along. I do see at least 2 more, and we'll make sure we connect you with the individuals who spoke today. But I do want to thank our panelists for their sharing their insights and experiences with us. And I do want to kind of share a few more ways in which you might be able to help. On the next slide, you'll be able to see that the information, the URLs for the organizations that were represented in this webinar. As you heard, it does take resources for these folks to be able to do the work that they do, and just to help women to be able to get by in their daily lives. So to the extent you can think about financial support, that would be helpful. We'll also be sending along these URLs in a follow-up email for this webinar. The Asian Pacific Fund is celebrating its 25th anniversary this year, and as part of our efforts to direct resources to our community's most vulnerable, we have launched the 250 by 250 campaign to build up a new grant-making fund to help amplify the efforts of affiliates like the ones you heard from today. Every dollar from a new donor to this campaign will be matched 2 to 1. So please visit asianpacificfund.org/250x250 for more information. Please look out for the follow-up email to the email address you used to register, as well as a survey to let us know how this webinar went for you. And on behalf of the Asian Pacific Fund and our affiliate partners who work tirelessly to lift up and empower Bay Area API women, we thank you for joining us and giving back to our community. Have a great day. Thank you all.